Welcome back to the Chatroom, mga kababayan. Magandang araw po sa inyo. Ngayong araw na ito, mapalad po tayo at kasama natin ang isang presidentiable. Siya po'y naging ministro ng simbahan, naging educator, social entrepreneur, naging spokesman ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, naging spokesman din po ng Department of Foreign Affairs at marami pang iba. Welcome to the show, Presidentiable Ernie Abella.
Thank you, Sec Mart. It's a pleasure to be with you. Maraming salamat. It's always good to see you.
That's great to see you. When we talk about your relationship with President Duterte, madalas ay nauungkat yung panahon na nakidnap ka, tapos tinulungan ka niya. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, nakakatuwa yung nangyari yun. Kasi during nung kapanahon na yun, I was in the process of buying a piece of property. And I made the fatal mistake of telling the guy or the woman that I was going to pay in cash. Anyway, maikli lang naman yung pagkakakidnap ko. So, but very instrumental, very key ang intervention ni PRRD. Dahil lang sa nung gabing yun, nagpadala kaagad siya ng hindi feelers. Talagang pinasabi niya sa mga kasamahan ng mga kumidnap sa akin na dapat walang mangyari sa pastor na kinidnap nila. And within 24 hours, I was set free. So, malaking bagay yun.
Nabanggit mo sa isa sa mga panayam na the President is a good acquaintance. Anong ibig sabihin nun?
Hindi kasi lagi lang sinasabi, good friends daw kami. Siyempre, gustuhin ko man yun. Hindi naman talaga kami, hindi kami lumaki together. Although we went to the same school. Pero, Davao, maliit ng Davao, so nagkikita-kita kami, hindi naman kami nag-uusap, pero nagbabatian. So he's a good acquaintance. He was a good acquaintance.
Good acquaintance, but during the time when the President ordered me to contact you, of course, hindi naman tayo magkakilala noon, and I remember we met in a coffee shop in Alabang, and out of nowhere, and I called you from Davao, and we saw each other in Alabang. During that time, na inoferan ka maging spokesperson, anong pumasok sa isipan mo? Why me? Of course, why me? You probably ask yourself, why you? Pero what was the rationale you think that he chose you to become his first spokesman?
Alam mo, malinaw kasi yung mandatong binigay niya, Sec, no? Yung kasi yung sinabi niya, ako palaaway, hindi pwedeng palaaway ang spokesperson. I mean, he's very candid, hindi ba? Very candid. So, yun ang nangyari. So, yun ang pinanindigan ko. And in fact, a truth to tell, hindi naman talaga spokesperson. Nung una kami nagpang-abot, ang full expectation ko was I was going to be a speechwriter. So, may hinanda naman ako, pero nung within 5 minutes, ang una yung sinabi, ang kailangan ko talaga, ang kailangan ko talaga spokesperson. So, yun. Tapos, anyway, sabi ko, patay, hindi pala yun. But, he's a very intuitive person. You have to hand it to him. And then, malinaw ang gusto niya. And then, I think he sized me up as soon as possible. As soon, within the first 5 minutes, he was able to find, I'm sure it looked like he was able to see what I could do for the administration. And yun ang nangyari. He coached me. He actually coached me about what to do. And so it was a great experience.
Yeah, well, I must say that you were very effective as the spokesperson of the President. Very calm. You brought that calmness during the most tumultuous times. I remember. Use your creative imagination.
Right. That was a little bit. I really meant to say connect the dots, but
but imagination is such a big word.
Right.
If you go deeper into it. No. Okay, so sinabi mo na 2016 ay inisip mo na, or it really crossed your mind to run for the presidency. Tell us more about that.
Siguro it's not so much to run.
Yeah.
But 2016, I had the sense of the possibility of being president, And not because I desired it, it just came, Parang siguro parang as a anong tawag nito, as a culmination of sa aking experience. Kasi people ask, ano ba yung experience mo, Basically kasi I'm a builder of institutions. I have started from ground zero, successful churches, successful schools, successful what do you call it, cooperatives. So kumbaga, they have the capacity for starting from ground zero. And in this sense, the presidency, nakita ko, we need parang a reboot. Kasi napansin ko, Sec Mark, na parang ang laki ng agwat between the rich and the poor. And it's not just owing to this administration, but parang ganun ang ganun ang natural result ng natin, ng ating mga polisiya. So, nakita ko na yun ang magiging kailangan ma-address ang malaking agwat, yung lack of patriotism, and then lack of trust sa gobyerno. So, na-sense ko na may capacity ko in order to help reboot or to rebuild the foundation for trust in the government para magkaroon tayo ng more participatory governance.
They say that one must always think the end in mind.
Correct.
So by 2028, if President Duterte is a president who partnered for change and Dutertenomics, build, what will a President Abella look like when he steps down in 2028?
Thank you for asking that, Sec. Basically, it'll be I would put it this way, it would be a more just, more peaceful, more joyful Philippines. Na kung saan ang tao I'll begin with the joyful, big sabihin mas masaya ang tao, not comparatively speaking to the situation. If, for example, there would be it would be less necessary for people to go out for jobs. Okay, they go out for choice. More peaceful sabihin na ituloy natin yung pangarap ng presidente na na orderly society, gano'n. And then thirdly, yung just society. So mahalaga yung ang mahalaga, pero nakikita ko na mas patas, magiging mas patas ang bayan. Natutuwa ka?
No, because as your friend, I already have a communicator.
Okay.
I already have a jingle for you.
O, talaga, sige nga.
It's a joy to the world.
Why not?
You'll catch everyone's attention in TikTok, right?
Oh, right.
Well, a joyful presidency. I think it's a good slogan. Yeah.
Well,
Very, very nice.
mas masaya.
Yeah, mas masaya. Yeah. Ano ang tungkol sa Pilipino? I mean, you've been across the world. You've traveled. Ano ang tungkol sa Pilipino dun sa migrating Filipino labor force ang nagbibigay sa'yo ng pag-asa?
Pag-asa na...
Pag-asa. I mean, what gives you hope when you see a Filipino?
Are you talking about the migrant workers?
Filipino in general.
Ang nakikita ko kasi, na may henyo ang Pilipino. May henyo ang Pilipino at halata naman sa labas yan, no?
Yeah.
Not only that, naniniwala ako na may tadhana. No? Na hindi naman kasi inukit sa bato na magiging mahirap na talaga tayo. Hindi natin kailangan tanggapin yan. Ang laki talaga ng potential ng Pilipino para umunlad. And we can actually become a contributor at the table of nations. Na meron talaga tayong pwedeng magandang mangyari para sa bayan.
Table of Nations. I mean, I love the way you say it. I mean, you're really a person who has so much dynamic words in you. But I want to ask you about your foreign policy, your migration policy once you become president. But before you answer that, let's take a very, very short break. Babalik po ang The Chatroom. Diyan lang po kayo. Nagbabalik po ang The Chatroom. Kasama pa rin natin si presidential candidate at kaibigan ko, Ernie Abella. kanina natanong ko yung foreign policy because you were talking about the Table of Nations. Well, what a beautiful term. I love it. Ano ang magiging foreign policy ng isang President Abella?
Itutuloy natin, Sec, yung present situation natin na kung saan sinasabi natin na tatahakin natin isang independent foreign policy. Ang ganda nga ng pagkakasabi, no? Friends to all, enemies to none. Pero ang dagdag niyan siguro is that habang hindi naman to basta't lang nakikipagkaibigan tayo, gagamitin natin yung spasyo. We will use that space to be able to build up the domestic strength economically, mainly economically and also socially, para magkaroon tayo ng mas malakas na tapang. Kumbaga gagamitin natin yung panahon na hindi tayo engaged in any controversies sa pagbubuo ng bayan, in nation building. So yun ang magiging natin, independent foreign policy, friends to all, enemies to none. Pero in the meantime, we will use that time and space to build up the internal structures, social and economic structures.
Yeah. It's going to be a very exciting one kasi siyempre I often hear you talk about globalization, labor migration, and then building internal structures in the Philippines para siguro we can keep our jobs here in the Philippines.
Yes,
So
definitely.
what's your policy pagdating
Regarding that, ang talaga nakita ko, Sec, is dapat bigyan tutukan talaga ang agrikultura. That instead of ignoring it or giving it benign neglect, ay magkaroon tayo ng i-build up natin siya into a mega industry. Why? So that we can have increased revenue sa rural population. Pati of course, walang matutulog na gutom. Medyo masakit pakinggan yun, na may 12.5 million people na Filipinos na nakakaranas ng gutom. And medyo masakit. Kahit na sabihin natin na lumalaki ang GDP, pero may mga gutom na gano'n, mukhang hindi makatarungan. Hindi makatarungan. So yun ang i-build up natin. One, so that we can have more jobs. We'll connect it, of course, with education, manufacturing, research and development, all the way to being able to post-harvest and helping the market, making sure talaga na patas yung laban. Na, for example, kasi hindi ba may mga polisiya kasi tayo na bumubukas tayo sa foreign ownership and stuff like that. Tsaka open tayo sa pag-importation. So kung pwede, protektahan natin the most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable, by the way, are the rural areas, especially in Mindanao. Especially in Mindanao.
And rural areas, we're talking about businesses, GDP, you mentioned it. Of course, para sa mga dalubhasa, I mean, GDP really is the production that we do inside.
Yung kita.
Yung kita domestic, but we sometimes fail to see that yung isang chunk ng ating lipunan ay mas malaki yung production, we just turn to average it. But you're an expert in cooperatives. I was leading there.
I'm an expert, but I'm familiar with cooperatives, yes.
So, paano mo ipapasok yung iyong experience sa cooperative para
we can give a whole menu, Sec Mark, of agricultural systems, no? Kung saan meron talaga industrial, meron din yung mga medium to large, medium size industries. And lalo na pag nagkaisa sila, magko-cooperate sila, they can actually engage in we can actually engage in not just in high value crops but also commodities, for example, more rice, more pwede talaga mag-usap at mag-agree sila. While meron din yung mga maliliit talaga na artisanal na mga farmers, pwede rin natin i-allow yon. So kumbaga, we can prepare ourselves for a menu para mahalaga manggaling itong recommendation sa kanila, hindi lang sa atin, hindi lang sa gobyerno, kundi talaga mapakinggan natin kung ano talaga ang gusto ng tao.
Artisanal, another good word, artisanal. And I can't help but think about education. Kasi siyempre, doon mo iti-train yung mga artisanal mo, yung mga testa. What's your policy in education?
Regarding that talaga, it's a high time na harapin natin. Alam mo, Pilipino takot sa mate,
Who's not?
Pero yung dapat mas tayo, i-emphasize natin yung science, technology, engineering, and somebody nga mentioned agriculture, and tama naman, and then also math. Pero kung sabagay, so that we can have more innovative, mas innovative yung ating yung ating next generation. At pag mas innovative sila, lalaki yung ekonomiya. At pag lalaki yung ekonomiya, more production, more economy. So a lot depends on the right education of the next generation. Tapos ang ano natin is hindi lang basta mga low-tech jobs ang dapat hinahanda sila, kundi handa sila tulad ng China, no? Ang China ang galing talaga diyan sa pag-i-educate ng mga scientific, for a next generation of scientifically minded students.
Hindi lang low-tech jobs, kundi pati yung mga high-tech jobs. So, that will lead me to the digitalization,
Right.
digitization, internet economy.
Right.
What's your plan for
You know,
our
yeah.
internet economy?
Ay basically yun ang magiging backbone, no, yung digital economy, knowledge economy. Hindi lang yung technology but the knowledge economy, and also the handling of data. Kasi at the end of the day doon ang labanan, hindi basta data, no. So for example, ang pwede natin kasi magawa, Secmart, is yung ating mga farmers have access to information. For example, the latest prices in their actual area, tapos published lahat yan, so that maka-cut out din naman yung yung middleman dun sa may farm, no, yung sa mga farms. So pwedeng lumiit yung yung distansya between producer and consumer. So mas malaki yung kita para sa tao. So in that sense, malaki yung tawag nito, malaki yung effect ng knowledge economy, no? O kaya yung, for example, if we develop better technology for our farms, for example, yung hindi na nga ito bago yung drip irrigation, yung ganon. So kung pwede, lahat ito may employ natin. We have a lot of catching up to do. And although sinasabi natin na knowledge economy, pero pahabol tayo. Pero pwede. Just matutukan lang. Dapat matutukan.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. There's so much catching up to do. But fortunately, we also have experts in drip irrigation. There was
Correct.
the Emmy sa Tagaytay and the rest of the guys who do aquaponics and lahat ng mga ponics na naisip na hydroponics now. All right, so we talked about the digital economy and hand in hand also the changes or the new innovations in currency, of course, from gold to money and cryptocurrency. I asked this to all of the presidentiables, and I'll ask it to you. What is your stand on cryptocurrency?
Of course, we're open to that. Even the central bank is open to that, di ba? Pero siyempre, ang kailangan alamin talaga. But right now, of course, there are going to be geopolitical implications for that kasi meron talagang maglalaban na dapat yung reserve currency natin is particular, maybe dollar or this. Pero as we can see, andyan na rin naman yung yuan, andyan na rin yung no? So nagiging matindi ang labanan or gold. And crypto is of course an alternative. So it's something that we should review, we should look after, and hey, we can go, sabi nga to the moon.
Maraming mga kabataan ngayon ang nag-i-invest sa cryptocurrency. So they really want to know what the stand of a presidential candidate like Ernie Abella. Okay, let's talk about COVID, pandemic. Hindi naman ito may iwasan. Talagang nag-mutate siya, tapos merong bagong sakit na darating. Anong gagawin ng isang President Abella?
Well, alam mo, we've learned a lot, ever since the COVID struck. And one of the things that we're learning is that konektado rin ito sa ating agri powerhouse. Na unang-una, pakain natin ng sakto yung tao natin to build up the immune system. Kasi at the end of the day, ang labanan sa immune system, di ba? Yung pagbabakuna is parang in a sense addressing certain things. Pero right now kasi, hindi pa talaga sakto yung hindi pa talaga certain risks are still there. So ang mantra ko diyan is, while there are risks, there should be choices.
Yeah.
So but ang walang problema. I think people don't build up immune system. You have continued free mass testing. and then precision lockdowns, and but also on the other hand, accept that it's part of the environment. So let's just be bold enough to continue having anong tawag nito, face to face. Let's live with it. Let's learn to live with it. But on the other hand, medyo inaantabayan na natin. Lalo kung saan ang talagang may mga surges, not just of cases, but surges, let's say, of adverse reactions, and adverse reaction, let's say, to vaccines. And tsaka, of course, mga mortality rates. So yun ang tinitingnan natin. Antabayan na natin kung ano talaga ang pati kumbaga, kung medyo delikado dito, then pwede tayo magsara dyan, this particular area. But on the other hand, pwede ipagpatuloy yung pang araw-araw na pangangalakal.
I like it that you mentioned basic health. We Filipinos, we like to eat canned goods, mga noodles, instant noodles, daing, salted.
Right.
So ang gusto mo is to go back to the basics. Eat healthy.
Eat healthy.
Veggies.
Siguro dalawang there are mixed reasons why we eat canned goods. Medyo, kasi spam, US. Hindi ba?
Libis.
You remember that. But anyway, but aside from that, yung pwede naman kasing, pwede tayo magkaroon ng, pwede natin turuan ng tao. We can relearn. For example, one of the biggest problems of Filipinos is kidney problems. That's because of high salt, low water. So dapat siguro pero ang tutulak dito hindi presidente, pero magkaroon tayo ng katuruan katulad ng let's utilize the reach of PCOO. Yung talaga to get all the way, all north to south, east to west, yung the information out. And by the way, we expect to use to really when we sit.
You mentioned water.
Yeah.
Water is one of the most important resources that we have in the world na kulang.
Totoo yan.
Anong solusyon mo?
Well, we just have to keep looking for sources of water. Tapos pagpapaintindi sa mga tao kung saan natin kailangan, let's say, ng mga dams, kung kailangan ng dams o ano. Pero may tubig naman tayo. At saka, well, if worse comes to worse, desalination, pero mahal yun. Pero mahalaga yung antabayanan natin na natural resources natin.
Gusto kong tanungin ka tungkol sa opinion mo about religion. Now, religion is such a, it's a very sensitive topic. But you can answer that after we, take a breather. Meron tayong mga ilang patalastas na kailangan ipalabas natin. Magreklamo sa akin si Kat de Castro pag wala tayong advertisement. Wala tayong pambayad sa ilaw at sa mga cameraman. So when we come back, kasama pa rin po natin ang former spokesperson ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, si Spokes Abella. Maraming former DFA spokes, former pastor, former educator, former businessman, former social entrepreneur, but currently a presidential candidate. We will be right back. Very interesting chat with presidential candidate Ernie Abella. Napakadami na experiences si Spokes Ernie na nasa kanyang sinturon at gusto ko siyang tanungin sa kanyang opinion pagdating sa separation of church and state. Now, I asked that hindi lang dahil sinulat ng aking producer dito, pero gusto ko rin malaman na okay lang ba na mag-endorse ang isang simbahan ng isang kandidato?
Well, actually, since they're also citizens, that's their right. Pero yung separation of church and state kasi, if I understand it right, ibig sabihin, kumbaga dapat walang state religion. Kumbaga, walang ganon. So, may freedom ang tao to have a choice. Pero I would like to see it this way, Sec Mark, na ang talagang mahalaga, it's not so much the religion would be the outer form, but the values, yung mga values, yun ang pwedeng i-apply even within the state, for example. Kasi at the end of the day, there are certain choices that have moral, that have moral implications. So, yun ang mahalaga, I think. That, dapat malinaw kung ano ang mga values ng liderato at not yung religion niya, pero yung kanyang mga values na that he holds precious.
Yeah, there are certain values, of course, that are very contradicting.
Yes.
To a politician or to the populace, say, same-sex marriage. Anong
Well, ako
tingin mo dito?
personally, if you're asking me personally about same-sex marriage, hindi ko, I don't agree with that. Pero since you are, I'm not just the head of souls, but the head of the state. We're open to listening to the opinions. But where I stand, I'm very clear.
What God puts together, no man can separate or put asunder. What do you think about that? Divorce.
Divorce. I think at certain, I personally, I do not subscribe to divorce. But I know that there are certain situations where that may be necessary. But on the other hand, sabi nga noon, the Catholic Church, there are always ways to avoid divorce, and that would be annulment, which would be another way of, just another
Change
way.
of name. Change of terms.
Well, but kumbaga, there are certain things, katulad naman kasi ng these are ideals, no? These are ideals that we try to live up to.
Where is the world headed to in terms of morality?
I think that's a very interesting question.
It's not here.
It's not here.
I know you can answer that.
No, but basically kasi I think the world is heavily influenced by Western liberal democracy. And sometimes, hindi lang democracy itself, but a certain radical version of democracy, or liberalism. And so, yung kumbaga, it's becoming very, very individualistic, Very, very individualistic, and kumbaga, nagiging tribal. Parang tayo nagre-regress, no? Parang nagre-regress. Yung tribo ko, dati yung tribo ko would be my language, whether Cebuano or Ilocano or this. Pero ngayon yung mga preferences ko, hindi lang, depende, some people, ngayon parang everything is politicized, naghahanap ako ng right. For example, mga kulay, o mga kanta. Certain songs are becoming even appropriated already by, by certain tribes. No? So, I think where is the world headed to? I think we're headed towards, if we don't watch out, we're headed towards a bit of chaos.
Extinction.
Pwede yung mga independe, pero pag medyo naglalabanan na tayo masyado sa it needs to be balanced, no? Individual and community. And that's what I am.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Kasi nabanggit mo na the world has become globalized. So we have one super culture as a world.
Mainly Western influence.
Yeah, but at the same time, meron din tayong mga tribalism na nabubuhay. But we also have technology.
Right.
A person who dances Paro-Paro G in Las Piñas, suddenly trends, and someone from the Americas would also do the same. So, very interesting ito nangyayari sa ating buhay.
Totoo.
Artificial intelligence, you think it will lead to extinction?
I'm not sure if it will lead to extinction. That's a genius of the human mind. Kasi kung AI lang, maybe it could mimic the algorithms of the human thinking, no? Pero at the end of the day, there are certain choices whether we will survive or not. That has to be done by a human being, not an artificial, not a computer. I don't know if you ever saw the movie 2001: Space Odyssey. No, you wouldn't. It's a great movie. You should watch it. It's an old one. Pero it's a movie about eventually about a guy called a computer called HAL. And ano siya, talagang he was beginning to act on his own. He went rogue and he was gonna kill all the guys. So you know, the last astronaut pulled the plug. You know, so at the end of the day, you know, AI had to give in to
Human being.
to human being.
Oh, wow.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Thank you for reminding me. I'll just pull the plug of Alexa. And then that's it.
Correct. Alexa can be intrusive.
Sige, balikan natin yung mga ibang issues naman sa bansa natin, tulad ng West Philippine Sea.
All right.
Yeah, talk about the West Philippine Sea.
Well, of course, West Philippine Sea is the Philippine term for South China Sea. You know, internationally, it's recognized as South China Sea. Again, meron tayong sovereign economic rights and dapat pagsamantalahan natin. And then, on the other hand, also, while there are a lot of reserves there, wala pa talaga tayong capacity. Wala pa tayong capacity to, for example, extract, for example, fossil fuels, you know, yung non-renewables. Pero alam mo, what's interesting there is, it's not so much it's not so much the fuel that we really should be concerned about. It's a fish. You know, kasi you know, at the end of the day, that place is extremely rich, Secmart. And dapat meron talaga, yun ang dapat panghandaan natin. We should develop a maritime capacity to be able to take advantage of that. And so, makakatulong yan kasi that's part of the agricultural powerhouse, yung ating maritime resources. So, if anything at all, I see it in terms of economics, not just diplomatically, but of course we need to be able. And since you know, diplomacy is basically war without weapons, you know, war without arms. But basically, it's still getting what we want. So, mahalaga, balikan natin ang ating independent foreign policy na kung saan dapat inaantabayan na natin, no? Kung ano yung dapat sa atin. At pag medyo may angal tayo, it doesn't matter, kailangan magbungangalan tayo. Because we have learned one thing, no? That in diplomacy, that in the international order, yung malalaking mga puwersa ay nakikinig sila sa opinyon ng mundo. So kung pakiwari natin, dehado tayo, then we should be able to tap into the world opinion para we can say, no, hanggang dito ka lang, may red line kami dyan, you know. And so, but in the meantime, balikan ko, mahalaga talaga ang pagbibuild up ng domestic natin para paglakas ng loob natin, Secmart. Kung meron man tumira sa atin, pagsisihan nila. Pag-iisipan talaga dahil pagsisihan nila na gagalawin tayo. Yun ang
Parang Israel, no? Maliit lang, pero may dome. Diba?
Correct.
They have a dome to shield themselves
Pwedeng gano'n. Pero medyo malaki-laki yung habol natin. Baka
Hindi lang dome.
baka dome.
All right. The next questions are basically questions that I'm sure you've been asked before. The endless issue of corruption. How do we end this?
I'm glad you asked that because hindi mo na itatanong yung ating kasing plataforma has 3 pillars. Number 1 is yung patas na lipunan. Pangalawa yung gobyerno nararamdaman, yung matatag na bayan. Yung number 1 yung patas na lipunan. Kasi ito yung nakita ko no, na nakita rin na marami na ang mga batas ay ginagawa ng nasa kapangyarihan. At usually, ang kalang katapat ay yung mga manigosyanteng malalaki. So kadalasan ng mga pulisiya ay siyempre tilted towards this, no? Tilted towards that. Kasi kahit na, let's say, 99% ating micro, small, and medium enterprises at mga 0.4% lang talaga yung malalaki. Pero ang laki ng boses nila, no? Ang laki talaga ng kanilang impluensya. Ang kadalasan nangyayari, Secmart, ay siyempre hindi pabor sa maliliit, katulad ng mga maliliit na farmers, maliliit na micro, small, medium enterprises, well, specifically micro. So kailangan talaga may bosses, I call it the third force, of civil society, so that we can tilt the balance. And for example, ang tanong mo kasi specifically is about corruption, tama? Alam mo yung corruption kasi is usually done on the local level. So kung may puwang naman ang local government code, it has enough space for civil society to be engaged and involved. so that they can address. For example, one of the jobs would be to look after tenders, sabihin bids and awards. No? Pwede lang, kung talaga interesado ang ating mga tao, huwag lang magbunga nga sa kalye. I mean, get involved. I would really say you get involved and so that you can actually address, is this project really good for the people? Magkano dyan? Tinitingnan nila yung budget, tinitingnan nila yung implementation. And so they're very carefully looking after whether there's corruption happening or not. So how do we address? Again, technology would be great by reducing people, contact with people. Pero the other thing is to have people actually observing the actual processes, and that would be civil society. For example, the concerned farmers of, let's say, of Pangasinan, the concerned, let's say, teachers of so-and-so, of particular. Tinitingnan nila kung ano talaga. Meron nga ba mga buildings? Meron nga ba mga bridges? Meron nga ba? And so, kumbaga, pag involved sila, they can actually look after those issues. So, instead of just putting it in we're publishing about it, let's all get involved. Get involved in the building of the nation. And that would end, especially corruption. Kasi corruption has been practically endemic.
Thank you for your answer. So civic participation is very important under President Abella, which is good. Let's talk about the drug war. What's your stand on the drug war?
I would call it the drug challenge, And I believe that alam mo ang take home ko dyan is yung I think it was still within the first 3 months of my being a spokesperson. I went to my barber, Secmark, and ang unang bati sa akin ng barbero ko, sabi niya, sir, masaya na kami. Sabi, ba't kayo masaya? Sabi, kasi nakakauwi niya yung mga anak namin. Nakakauwi, hindi na kami natatakot na umuwi sila na gabing-gabi na galing sa trabaho dahil wala na mga adik-adik daw sa kalye. So I would say it has done a great job, and I would say we would like to continue that. We would like to continue it maybe in a more quiet and less dramatic way, and just to make sure that the streets are safe and that justice is delivered quickly and swiftly.
Are you going to bring back the country to the ICC?
The ICC is out of our purview. Our government works, as Sec Guevara said, our courts work. So ang lang is we need to be bold enough. If we think something wrong has been done, somebody should take it up here.
We've talked about food security, agriculture. Yan ay unang napag-usapan natin kanina. How about yung pagtaas ng presyo ng langis sa pandaigdigang merkado? This is a problem that we have perennially been...
Yeah. Well, of course, again, it's not just a Philippine problem. It's a global situation. So in the meantime, hanggang sa hindi naman kung kailangan ng ayuda, then we'll do that. No? But at the same time, sabay-sabay din natin talaga dapat hanapin yung alternatibo. We need to look for sources for renewable energy. Kasi ang fossil fuel naman is it's not renewable. But right now, there seems to be there is a trend towards renewable energies, and we'd like to encourage that, especially solar, wind, and turbine, driven by the sea, maritime resources. So I would say that we really need to do a lot of catch up on that, and also, again, change lifestyles. Change that. And for example, even the building should be more, it's
green.
More green. There you go.
May nakasulat na tanong dito,
Sige.
Spokes Ernie. Pero this is about other candidates. Meron ka bang isang kandidato na talagang ayaw mong manalo? Parang anyone but, gano'n. But, you can answer that later.
Yeah, okay.
Sa pagbabalik po ng chatroom.
Sige.
Please stay where you are. Nagbabalik po on the chatroom. Dito sa chatroom, we only talk about platforms of government. Wala mga personal issues dahil mas mahalaga na malaman ng ating mga kababayan kung anong plataforma di gobyerno ng ating mga presidential candidates. vice presidential candidates or mga senators. Now, ang sabi ni Mr. David na the only way that BBM or Inday can be beaten is by uniting the rest of the candidates and for some to withdraw. What do you think about that?
Well, it all depends if that's your platform. If your platform is to beat these guys, then that's what you do. You know? But the way I see it, Sekmart, is I have a vision.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's fair to the vision and fair to the choice that I've made if I give it up for this, you know. Because I don't think I don't think the linchpin is these candidates. I think the linchpin is the people themselves. The Filipino people have to learn to become citizens. Let me repeat that. It's a $64,000 word. No, ang dapat matuto ang Pilipino na maging citizen. And what is a citizen? Is it because we're part of a republic, and it's not just the presidency. Otherwise, we're just talking about a monarchy. No? It's about the people. So, ang akin, yun ang role ko kasi is to get the people going. And para sa akin, hindi pa tapos ang hindi pa tapos ang
Well, I want to congratulate you because, again, whether you make it or not, I mean, this is a huge soapbox of your life,
although
to say the least.
I have to underline that I don't have a plan B. There you go.
I have faith in you.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Another convert.
Well, that's what friends are for.
That's right.
Okay, so anong strategy mo para manalo?
To be on shows like this. Yeah. Hindi ba? We accumulate viewership. Hindi ba? Look, honestly, Zach Mart, when I started, people asked me, ba't ka tatakbo? Sabi ko, hindi ba? It seemed like such an obvious question. Sabi na, bakit? Meron ka bang 1 billion? Meron ka bang makinarya? Wala. Yan. And actually, zero. Kumbaga, zero.
Yeah.
Hindi zero, zero. Zero. But things picked up. And then, some programs, like one particular debate, gave us a viewership of 14 million. 14 million views. And I think, if at least 14 million people learn that there's such a guy as Ernie Abella. On the other hand, increasingly, I know that there are surveys out there. And at first, I thought I'd look at the surveys, But then, my experience is on the ground. I've been from north to south now. People actually recognize me and not just say, oy, ganon, but actually positively recognize.
So not only as the former spokesman of the president, but as a presidential candidate.
Correct.
Okay,
And
great.
with an opinion that they actually value. So parang gusto ko yung naririnig ko.
Well, I must tell you that my brother was messaging me during your first debate. Said,
All right.
To si Spokes Ernie, magaling ito.
You need to introduce me to
He'll buy you a scotch.
yeah, you'll get me scotch.
Okay. Marami pang tanong dito. Alin sa mga programa o polisiya ni Presidente Digong ang itutuloy mo?
Yung build, no? I think some of that. But I'd like to focus it more towards agri. We just have to, for example, usually kasi build talks about horizontals, We'd like to do some verticals also, like for example, post-harvest facilities, mga cold storages, more of that, and of course yung connectivity. We'd like to be able to do more of that. I think that's brilliant, that's brilliant to just say. And it doesn't really matter whose program it was. All we need to do is continue. Why? Because it's for the nation.
Yeah. I already have a slogan for that. Agree.
Agree. We should come bring it to our team.
Why not? Okay. Ano naman ang mga programa o alin sa mga programa ni Presidente Digong ang hindi mo itutuloy?
Wala naman siguro hindi itutuloy. It's just a question of being able to tweak and modify some of them. For example, yung IATF, I would say, I would elevate it to become a Health Security Council. Kumbaga, hindi lang siya basta nagre-respond, no, to ang tawag nito, to a particular crisis, but actually to be more anticipative and then, for example, build up yung, sinabi ko kanina, yung build up immune systems, stuff like that. So it becomes a bigger concept, mas malaki. So, yun. So, accept and continue.
Spokesperson, my friend, the floor is all yours. Talk to the people.
Una-una, nagpapasalamat ako kay Sec Martin at saka sa PTV4 para sa oportunidad na pwede tayong magsalita sa harapan ng ating mga kababayan. Ang ano ko po siguro, gusto kong itanim sa puso ninyo, maitanim sa puso ninyo na ang paggawa ng bayan, ang eleksyon ay isa lang pinto para makasali tayo sa pagbuo ng ating bayan. You know, nation building is a task, not just of the president, but of the people. And remember, we are a republic. Hindi naman tayo, hindi tayo monarchy na dependent tayo sa isang leader lang. Tayong lahat, kasama tayo. So kumbaga yung leader gives the vision, gives us the North Star, pero tayong lahat ay dapat kasama dyan. At alam po niyo, pag mangyari man yan, na nabukas tayo at nakita natin na pwede nating gawin ang ating kinabukasan, na pwede magkaroon ng isang kinatawag natin siglo Pilipino, a Philippine century, a century of the peaceful economic rise of the Philippines, na kung saan makikita natin isang bayan na mas makatarungan, mas mapayapa, mas masaya, at magkaroon tayo ng isang bayan na kung saan gusto natin, that a nation that we are proud of, a nation that's worthy of Filipinos, and Filipinos worthy of the nation. Ito po yung ating pananaw. Hindi po ito para sa akin. Ito po ay para sa ating lahat, lalo na po sa ating mga sumusunod. It is a nation worthy of the Filipinos and Filipinos worthy of the nation. Yun po ang ating pananaw. And hinihikayat ko po kayo na kumilos po ngayong Mayo 9, hindi lang po para sa nainganyo tayo dahil sa may konting suborno, kundi po para gumawa tayo. It is our chance to actually help build the nation. A nation is built brick by brick, person by person, choice by choice. And who knows, at the end of the day, we will have a nation we can be proud of. A nation na talagang katulad ng sinasabi na sa salita ng mga Ebreo, naging ilaw sa mga bayan. A light to the nations. You know, the U.S. is known as a city on a hill. China is known as the Middle Kingdom. And we can become a light to the nations. Bayan na nararapat sa Pilipino at Pilipino nararapat sa bayan. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Spokes Ernie. That's the pulpit from the palace.
Thank you. Happy birthday, sir.
Yun lang po yung meron tayong oras ngayong episode na ito, mga kababayan. Once again, maraming salamat kay spokesperson Ernesto Abella, who is now running for president. At anong number mo sa balota, sir?
1.
Number 1. Parang plaka lang, ha?
Hindi ba? Number 1 sa balota.
Abangan po ang mga replay ng programang ito ng The Chatroom here on PTV at sa lahat po ng social media pages ng Presidential Communications Operations Office. Sa aming pagbabalik, iba pang mga presidential ang ating mga kausap. Of course, sa ibang episode po yan. So, tutok lang po dito sa The Chatroom. Maraming salamat po. Thank you, sir.